Welcome, Mallika. It's a great privilege to be in conversation with you.
Thank you.
As an actor, as a dancer, as an activist, as an intellectual, a public intellectual at that, and now the Chancellor, you've donned different hats. How have these different roles been reflected in the book, in a free fall?
I think the head that dons the different hats is still the same head. And it's that head and the experience of that head on that self that is reflected in the book. And I'm talking of a long period of my life and all the sort of strange things that I have gone through. And is it not clear?
Yeah.
And the strange encounters I have had. So it's still the same head. And I think all of them are reflected one way or the other in the book.
I was also thinking the striking parallel between another book, My Experiments with Truth. One cannot miss that as readers. From my experiments with truth to my experiments with living. It's a historical trajectory too, where my experiments with truth maybe did not so much address the woman in India and also the woman's experience. Have you thought about, being a woman in that book? Have you thought about how has my experiments with truth been instrumental in maybe some of the things that you are dealing with in your work?
Both sides of my family were deeply involved with Gandhiji. Gandhiji's first satyagraha in 1918 was between my grandfather and his sister, one representing the textile mill industry and the other representing the people, the workers. And the famous psychoanalyst Erik Erikson has said in his book that according to him, Gandhiji's satyagrahas were experimented during that period. And it was the success of that satyagraha that led him into his strategies against the British. So, in many senses, in an increasingly corrupt and lie-filled, high-fake world, I have tried to live by truth and transparency and honesty and justice. I truly believe in the India that Gandhiji believed in, which is an India where the last tear of the last face was wiped. I am not somebody who thinks that an increasing GDP or an increasing share market reflects any reality. I believe in an India that lives in extremely developed villages, where villages are not equated with absence, but are still places where people can live with dignity and justice. And in all the things I have done in my life, I have tried to work towards those goals of trying to see if justice can be handed out, if dignity can be handed out. So one of the comments that I seem to get most frequently when people read my book is, "You're very bold." And what does that mean, you're very bold? It just means that I am willing to lay my weaknesses and vulnerabilities out there. And I feel that if one is not willing to do that, then why write a book? Then write fiction. And in a situation where we are living in a country where the ED can come at any time and any falsity can be thrown down your neck, I think holding on to the fact that perhaps truth still matters is important to me.
The laying bare that you said about truth, about fragilities, about vulnerabilities, about the everyday in a woman's life is much more difficult for a woman than for a man, right? That's where my experiments with truth, in a sense, is easier writing for Gandhi than you writing about your experiments with living. Would you agree with me there?
I don't know about being more difficult or less difficult, but ever since I became a public figure, which was when I was very young, that I went into films and became a dancer who was talked about, I had always felt that I could help women more by sharing the pain that I felt, because I was seen as somebody who was born with a silver spoon, somebody who never had to face anything, somebody who could walk into any situation. And while on the one hand that was true, on the other hand it was not true at all. So for instance, when my marriage was breaking up, I was writing about it all the time. I was being interviewed about it, and I was trying to share with other young couples that marriage is only one part of one's life. I liked my ex-husband very much. We ran a business together. We got on very well together. And that it was the marriage that wasn't working. But that you didn't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. You could say, this section is not working, and remove that, but still hang on to the rest. And I thought that this was important to share because, especially in estrangement and divorce situations, it becomes such a, I will turn my children against you. I will see that they hate you. I was pregnant with my second child. My first son was 5.5. And I kept saying to him, your father loves you as much as I love you. It's not about you. We are both your parents. And that he and I have decided that we don't want to live together, but we will always be your parents. And there were very difficult times. It wasn't easy because I was feeling resentful. I was feeling shattered. I had never wanted to get married. I got married at that time relatively late. At today, 29 is not late. So for me, the breakup of my marriage was like a failure of something that I said, if I ever do this, it'll be for keeps. And it would have been very easy for me to turn my son against his father. And at times, he would wake up at 2 o'clock and say, I want to go to Papa. And I would sit him in the car and I would take him. And my ex-husband doesn't drive. So at 3:30, I would receive a call saying, Revanta wants to come back to you. So I would go back again and fetch him back. So it wasn't easy at all. Also, we were running a publishing company together. I had to go into work every day, work with him. And Revanta would be in a swinging cradle between our two desks, being swung back and forth between us. And the children understood as they grew up. My daughter was born after we had separated. But she, again, adores her father. And they're both very close to us, both of us. And my ex-husband is a very dear friend. So I think there's so much societal pressure on bitterness and hatred. And today we see it amongst other religions, against other castes, against other language. But it's also amongst the family. You are either this or this, and you are never either this or this. We are 55 different colors. And you know, it's like stupid people saying to me, I used to smoke as a young woman. And if in the 80s people saw you smoke, it meant A, that you drank, and B, that you were screwing around. The three don't necessarily go together, but that's how our heads work. And I think for women, that's still true. I see Kerala as a state which drinks so much, and yet you, except for a 5-star hotel, you can't go out and drink as a woman. And I find this hypocrisy pathetic. But it still exists. It still exists in the same manner.
I'm really, really happy that you brought this matter up because in 2024, it's still difficult to talk about a divorce in Kerala. So having to face a divorce and that too under limelight, if I can, it must have been very difficult. I must share this with the audience that when I asked her, is there anything in particular that you would like to discuss? What she said was, you can ask me any question. And I think in any interview or in any conversation, there should be transparency and, let that pan out. I was deeply impressed by that because normally authors and public figures are very worried about the questions that are raised. And here is an open book in front of us. Thank you for that, Mallika. I wanted to ask a question which might be slightly, I don't know whether how you'll take it. But the title of your book has In Free Fall. Now, In Free Fall, for me as a reader, raised a certain kind of a niggling question as to why do you call it free fall? Because much about your life, as you rightly said, there's so much of privilege that you carry into each and every, page that you have written. We are born with privileges. You, as you said, you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth. So the free fall is, in a sense, not exactly free. Would you agree with me there?
No, I wouldn't. I think I've written about this in the book. I was 11 years old in the first Montessori school in India, in Ahmedabad, Shreyas, where Madame Montessori actually came and started it with my aunt, Papa's sister. And it was a time when the Idi Amin issue was going on in East Africa, and lots of Gujarati families were sending their children back. And because they were Gujarati families, and because my school, Shreyas, was a school with a boarding, a lot of them came into our school, and they came into our class but were several years older than us. So if I was 11, there were young men who came in who were 15. And the difference between the thinking of an 11-year-old and a 15-year-old is that cusp of becoming sexually motivated in your head, your genes are raging, which is not true. It wasn't true as an 11-year-old in me. And one day, two of these boys, whom I didn't know but were in my class, had a fight about whose girlfriend I was. And one of them knifed the other one, and it was a hospitalization and all sorts of things. And my aunt, my principal, called me and said, you must have done something to have instigated this. And I said, I don't even know them. They are in my class, but I don't know them, and there's no instigation. I got really upset that she was insinuating. And when we were growing up, Amma was the one who toured all the time. But they had decided, my parents, that one of them would always stay till I was 12. My brother is older. That till I was 12, one parent would be in the house, and it was invariably my father. Whenever there was a crisis in school, it was Papa who was called. So Papa was called, and I was sitting outside my principal's office, and Papa came out 15 minutes later grinning. And I said, why do you think this is funny? I'm being scolded for something I didn't do. And he said, Malli, I didn't think it would start this early. And I went home and I said, this is not fair at all. Why am I being blamed? And he sat me down and he said, Malli, most people in life follow the diktats of society. There are some of us who believe in following our own path and our own truth. And if you do, you will be stoned. You will be singled out. And I thought I would have this conversation when you were 16 or 17, but we are having it today. So think about it. And I remember going away and thinking about it for 2 or 3 days and coming back and saying, Papa, I would rather work my own path and I would rather follow my own truth. And believe you me, the stones started coming very early. And that was the free fall, that I took risks, I took chances, I took decisions which were sometimes wrong, sometimes right, sometimes neither wrong nor right. But that my parents had the trust that if by the age of 11 they hadn't given me the values of life, then it was too late. So they trusted both my brother and me to take the right decision, to take the right choice. They were always there to guide. And my mother and I had some furious arguments. When I first started living with somebody during my Indian Institute of Management days, my mother was horrified, absolutely shocked, because she was brought up in a very Victorian kind of way. And I said to her that, I don't want to get married to this person. I am attracted. I think I'm in love just now. And this is the way I want to live. And we used to have furious arguments. And then several years later, I had come back from a tour and I walked into Amma's office and there was one of Amma's dancers telling Amma that she was getting married. And Amma saying, but why don't you just live together? It's not worth taking a risk getting married. So we had come a full circle. But yes, there were many arguments and many discussions which we later went back to say we agreed. And my mother always said that I turned her into a feminist. Though I don't think that was true.
I think that's a brilliant, brilliant answer to what to me was a very difficult question. And I completely agree with you there. Maybe this was the answer that I was looking for. Because every time a woman is at odds with societal values, every time there is a subversive, a transgressive streak to a woman, particularly in a state like Kerala, she goes into a free fall, right? That's another interpretation. You're on your own and you're falling. And there are no arms to support you. There is nothing for you there. And it's remarkable that you talk about your parents with that kind of a trust and adoration, in a sense. And I wish that there were more parents in Kerala listening to Mallika than the students here, than the young girls here. I wish more parents were listening to her, because I think that is the ultimate thing that an education system should be doing, a family should be doing, to trust the youngsters, to trust the next generation. And I think you got it from your parents.
You know, Madame Montessori said a very interesting thing to my grandmother and my aunt when they went and found her in Italy and brought her. She said, you know, parents are like a gardener. They have to see that the soil is right, they have to see that the sunlight is given, and they have to see that water is given. They are not there to control how the branches grow, or when the branches are flowering, or when the branches want to not grow. They have to trust.
Thank you. This book for me was very interesting also because it defined or it traced a certain trajectory that you had with your body, the relationship that you had with your body. And that was again something that was phenomenal, because women normally do not talk about the relationships they have with their bodies.
And yet, the woman's body remains a place of shame and a place of honor where men settle their scores.
So how, I mean, you have described it in your book in great detail, but I would really love to listen to you talking about it. This very complicated, very fraught relationship that you had with your body, your fascination with becoming thin, the different experiments with, different kinds of diets and the fad diets that you went on, the tortures that you inflicted upon your own, maybe even self-esteem to a certain level. How would you talk about all these things to the audience, which has many of whom probably have not read your book?
Many of whom I hope will. I grew up in the same societal, beauty-driven world that today is much more present because of WhatsApp and so on. But we had magazines, and the women on the magazine covers and the models were always svelte and beautiful. And of course, my mother was very svelte and very beautiful. And I found that I had my father's genetic makeup, which always grew towards getting heavier, and wanted to be slim at any cost, and didn't know so much. I mean, today there is so much more information about everything that's available on the phone. I grew up in a time when you still had to go to a library and there were cyclostyling machines, no Xerox machines even, and you went and sort of cranked a cyclostyle to, otherwise you just took notes by hand, and if you wanted information, you went to the encyclopedia, which was out of fashion. And so you gathered whatever you could from around you, from what you read or from what you saw on Women's Own or Femina or Stardust or whatever. And so I wanted to be thin, and I wanted to be able to wear anything I want to. I did not want to become a dancer. I wanted to be anything but. It was too much hard work that I saw my mother do. So it was really not till About a decade later, when I had become a professional dancer, that I transitioned and I had become a mother. And I was doing the Mahabharata. I was away for 5 years. Information was gradually becoming easier, still far away from the internet age. That I started realizing that my body was my temple. That if I am a dancer, this is it. And later realized that for each of us, we really only have one body. We have many clothes, we have many friends, we have many destinations, but we only have one body and we turn it into a garbage can. We send our car for servicing every 3 months or 6 months. When do we service our own bodies? We don't think it's necessary till disaster strikes. And so over the years, I made friends with my body. I started listening to what it said to me. If I suddenly was craving sweets, it meant that my body needed the sugar. If I was suddenly craving bitter things, it meant that there was a chemical imbalance that required the bitterness. And I started trusting it. I started talking to it. I still do, which is why, touch wood, I still dance 6 hours a day. And I am able to do most anything that I want to, but I do service it. I am a great Ayurvedic Panchakarma person. I am careful with what I eat, but I am not fanatical anymore. If I suddenly crave something, I know how to balance my body, and I talk every day. And I sometimes go through an indulgent phase when and I say to my body, I promise I'll come back very soon. Let me just be lazy and eat and drink what I want. But you must understand that this is the only one we have, and more than any other temple, this is what you have to go inside of. Your mind, your body, your sense of self, and be true to it. Have the courage to do the Atma Manthan that is required, because unless you can look yourself in the mirror every morning and genuinely say that I have not caused harm knowingly to anybody, and I have tried to light a light every single day, everything else is really worthless and transient.
It's amazing you say that, because as even in the university, I see, when I look around, I see young girls being ashamed of their bodies, trying to draw themselves in, trying to hide the body and, in some sense, try to maybe pretend that the body is not important at all. And you have told the audience, you have told your readers that it is necessary to talk to your body. But since you began with this whole thing about beauty, we have a roaring beauty industry, chiseled, the way in which it grooms bodies into a certain kind of perfection that the industry needs. But over the years, the ideas and the standards of beauty have also changed. Because
unfortunately, our hankering after a fairer self has not changed.
Has not changed at all. Fair and beautiful still remains. So I was also a little surprised when, as I read through the pages of your book, and you talked about this kind of a fascination for being thin. Was it about doing many things? Because earlier, the beauty industry subscribed to more buxom, voluptuous kind of feminine beauty standards. And then it transitioned, I don't know when maybe with liberalization, right? The chiseled bodies came into our imaginaries. So how do you look at...
And in India, in any case, all the beautiful sculptures are all fairly buxom. Thin waists, but very rounded hips. No, I think mine was just the freedom of being able to wear whatever I wanted. Really, that was what it was.
Did you think about these at that point of time, that there are other beautiful beauty standards?
No. I was like any college-going kid, playing competitive badminton, hating college, not wanting to study the stupid stuff that they were making us study. And very soon, at 17, coping with Papa's death, which completely catapulted me into another world. so in a different way, it was a childhood filled with, or a teenage years filled with different kinds of doubts and different kinds of questions.
But then, may I ask you something that disappointed me? Because I really wanted you to talk about your dance and your art, talking to your body and sculpting your body, and maybe in constant dialogue with your body, which was something that I wanted to read a little bit more about in the book.
Hey, I haven't finished writing.
So is there something else coming up?
My publishers are after my life to write my life. I'm not sure I'll write my life. Maybe some chapters.
But could you talk about that a little bit, how your dance helped you maybe be at peace with your body?
Not only with my body, I think with myself. Today, I dance if I'm happy. I dance if I'm angry, which means I dance a lot at the moment because I'm very angry with what's happening in India. I dance when I'm wanting to be free. I dance when I'm disappointed. And dance, it doesn't mean I get into my Bharatanatyam mode. It just means dance. I put on loud music and dance, and sometimes I dance to the Hungarian waltz, and sometimes I dance to some African stuff, and sometimes I'll dance to some flamenco stuff. But yes, dance and move. I think physical activity that you enjoy alleviates most things. And science has proved this. Science says that after a certain number of minutes, an hour, 45 minutes, whether you want it or not, oxytocin and serotonin gets released in your body just by the sheer dint of physical work. So I don't understand, with all this medical history and medical science, why when we are depressed or when we are angry or when we are feeling pathetic about life, why we just don't go and find something physical to do that will instantly trigger all the things that Valium or alcohol or any drug will do. I mean, it's so easy to find something to do. I remember dancing at the Osho ashram when Osho was still around, and he had this dynamic meditation, which I'm going to show you, which went like this, for like 60 minutes. And by the end of it, you were so exhausted, but felt so incredibly exhilarated. I still do it with management groups that I'm teaching because everybody's so uptight, and yet the freedom of the body is a freedom that is incomparable. To be able to feel in your body and to feel I can do anything, I can jump and I can scream and I can roll on the floor. There is no better happiness. There is really no better happiness.
I think that's wonderful. I don't know whether you have noticed it. It's something, I grew up in the north of India. And I think that in Kerala, women have much more strictly choreographed bodies, They're not allowed to stray into more freedom.
My dear, I grew up with the image of Kerala as a matrilineal system. I grew up with stories of my great-grandmother who, when the Mappala revolution was coming and the Mappalas were coming, she was a young widow with 6 children, and her neighbors came and said to her, run away or they will kill you. And she said, let them come. She had her own Mappalas cook a meal for 200 people. When they came to raid her, she threw open her kitchen. She said, you must be very tired. Why don't you eat? And then talk to my Mappalas. And if they say that I exploit them, you can rape me or kill me, you do whatever. These poor men apparently were sort of completely open-mouthed at this bare-chested, tiny woman inviting them into her home, feeding them. And then the people who were working with her said, she's like an amma to us. And they did their namaskars and left. And this is the Kerala woman I was brought up on. And look at all of you sitting there feeling frightened, not doing anything and saying, allow. Who the F allows? Why do you give them the power to allow? We don't allow anybody but my own head. Who is society? What does society actually do for you? Nothing. When you fall down, there's nobody. When you are broke, there is nobody. When you are sick, there is nobody. So how does it matter what they say? Who are they? You are giving them that power. Don't give it to them. Take away that power from them. Men as well, because men are as imprisoned as women. You just don't know it. The first thing you are told is, be a man, right? Don't be a man. Be a human being. Be a humane being. Forget gender, forget caste, forget all this nonsense. We only have one life and the world is trying to screw it up. Don't let it be screwed up. Light your own candle and give light to one person every day. That's the only thing that life is worth.
Wonderful. I wish Mallika was the chancellor of every university in Kerala. I think you would all agree with me there, right? We wish that you were our chancellor in all the universities that we have in Kerala, particularly the University of Kerala. Thank you. But you also, I mean, very interestingly, you love food, right? I do. You love food, and
I hate Gujarati food. My tastes are completely Dravidian, I have to say. Give me a good sadhya, that's all I want.
but that particular phase in your life when you suffered from anorexia, bulimia, would you care to talk about that? Because I think for the
Sure.
younger women, that would be a learning experience.
Anorexia, bulimia as words didn't exist, I don't think. I spent years and years, especially my years in the Indian Institute of Management, living on 1 glass of Complan and 1 orange a day and smoking 30 cigarettes a day. And I would ask myself, do you want to die slim or do you want to live longer fat? And the answer, stupidly, at that stage was, I want to be thin. And I did everything that one shouldn't do. I then went into a phase where after every meal I would throw up. And I would only keep breakfast in, and it caused great embarrassment because I was always looking for a loo even before I sat down at the table. Was there a soundproof loo that I could go and throw up in? Terrible years, but luckily it was short enough that my body came out unscathed. But bad idea. It's not how thin or fat you are, it's whether you are fit, whether you can be what I have just said. Have a body that can do anything. You can have a big stomach, but if you can do cartwheels, you are fine. It's not about the shape, it's about the fitness. And I'm telling you this so that you don't go through the arduous, horrible path that I did. And that's why I'm sharing it in my book, because you don't have to. And I'm telling you, this is your temple. Everything else is really non-consequential. Understand that, and you will be much happier, much calmer people.
Thank you. That's very sound, solid advice. There's a particular section in the book where Mallika experiences, she had an experience with a hypnotist, which was the most hilarious part of the book. She fakes being hypnotized, which I think a lot of women also do.
You mean our orgasms?
So she fakes this, this whole episode, she fakes being hypnotized. Now, it's hilarious. You should read that book and that section in particular. But what I wanted to ask you, Mallika, was, have you ever been hypnotized, literally and figuratively, by something?
By something? Of course, every time I fell in love. I have, after that, several times tried to be hypnotized, and it has never succeeded. And many of my friends, after I gave up hypnosis, I gave up cigarette smoking, 40 cigarettes a day, in a half-an-hour session where I spent $200 with a Jewish hypnotist who said to me, you're an actress, for you it'll be easy to imagine. And all that, I'm lying on this sofa saying, $200 gone. He's taken my cigarettes and he's jumped on them. They are British cigarettes. I'm in New York. So difficult to find them. So I've lost the money, lost the cigarettes, and I'm just sitting here acting this out. I have never picked up a cigarette after that. Ever. So whether I was hypnotized or I allowed myself to be convinced, I don't know what it was, but it's never happened again.
As a reader, one thing that I really wanted to read a little bit more about in the book, which left me a little dissatisfied in a sense, I wanted to know more about your experience of being Draupadi with Peter Brooks, that entire episode, which is kind of, you have touched upon it, but a little bit more of detail would have been interesting, because you say now that you're going to write more.
Whenever in school or college I did well in science, and when I got into the Indian Institute of Management, it was always whispered that it was because of my father's influence. Whenever I won a youth festival, it was always whispered that it was my mother's influence. Even when I did become a professional dancer, about 5 years after Papa died, and when I went on my first tour, sponsored by the government of India and the ICCR, it was whispered that I got it because I was Amma's daughter. My only sort of fear was, I'm going to all the theaters in Europe where Amma has danced and gotten a tremendous name, and I hope I don't go and blow it. But there was always that connectedness because I was working out of Ahmedabad, Darpana was there for me, Amma was a safety net. And it was really only when I went to join the Mahabharata that all my safety nets disappeared. The name Sarabhai didn't matter in this group of actors who were completely sort of unilaterally involved in theater. Peter Brook did not want me to dance. I was already known as a Bharatanatyam Kuchipudi dancer in Paris where we were working. I was the only one of 22 people in the cast who did not dance in the play. Everybody else danced, something or the other. He said to me, I want to introduce you as a tragedian, and you will create this role. As I said, this was 1984. If I wanted a reference or if I wanted to speak to Amma, for 3 days I would be on the phone with some operator saying, sorry, lines are out, pending. I mean, pending was the clause that you heard the most often in trying to get an international phone call. No email, of course. So if I finally did get through on the phone to my mother and said, Peter is asking me to do this, but I have read references that say that's not what happened. Please send me such and such a book. The book would arrive 15 days later by post. And then I would find a reference. So I was the only person in the cast who spoke no French and had to learn it to do the play. I was the only one who had done no professional theater. So I was the odd one out. I was the only Indian who had reference to the Mahabharata because it's been a favorite. Draupadi had been a favorite character since I was like 5 years old. And it was an incredibly difficult time of being more or less being cut off from everything and having to depend only on my own resources, internal resources, thought resources, research resources. And it was during the performance of Draupadi over those 5 years in so many countries that I came to realize that I had been a dancer and I had been somebody who fought for justice. The word activist wasn't born then. And seeing the effect that Draupadi had on women of all kinds in so many different countries, from very sophisticated French women studying in the Sorbonne to black mamas in New York, to Aboriginal women in Australia, to sort of very Scandinavian women, I thought, I can't finish this and go back into being a dancer alone. My activism has to use these incredible languages of performance, of theater, of filming, of whatever. And that this is the best medium for me to get beyond the walls that people create in their heads, saying, oh, no, I know all about this, I don't want to listen to this. That if I could actually create performances that spoke of the things I wanted to, that is what I needed to do. So in many senses, not Peter, but the 5 years that I spent with myself, often in utter despondency in the beginning, often in utter loneliness. I had never run a house, I had never been a mother, I had never been frozen to death, I had never had to walk up 14 floors to a rehearsal every day, carrying my baby, carrying sort of lots of bags and breastfeeding at the same time and trying to learn French at the same time and being looked down upon because I couldn't speak French and arguing because I was an Indian. It was a time that made me. Whatever I am today happened to happen during those 5 years. There were many influences. Certainly my whatever I have learned as a performer was greatly formed by Peter. who used to say to me that acting is like peeling an onion and finding the shunya inside it. You can never be the character. You can be the emptiness through which the character goes to the audience. But you are not Draupadi. You are the emptiness that Draupadi will fill. And I think all my work since 1990 has been in using the arts, using this talk, using my book, to talk about the things that matter, to talk about the things that I think would help other people divest themselves of many fears and many prejudices and make them blossom. If I can be a catalyst for any of this, then that's really what my life is about.
Wonderful. I think Draupadi did change you, right? She inhabited you and changed you.
Very much.
Okay, wonderful. Since you've worked in different film industries, this was again a question that I wanted to raise. Your tryst with various film industries in India as a woman, would you care to talk about that a little bit to the audience?
I went into films when I was 15. I was in a shop in Bombay run by a friend of Amma's who used to be in Shantiniketan with Amma. And I was looking through some clothes and there was a man's face looking at me. And he walked around the aisle and he said, he didn't know who I was. And he said, I'm about to start a film, will you be my heroine? Turns out that he knew Amma very well, that Amma trusted him. And I did my first film, Sonal. And Sonal, so many years ago, was a film about incest. Never got released. I did 3 films in quick succession, all of them avant-garde, all of them new before the new wave started. And by the end of it, got thoroughly disgusted, saying that what's the point of creating films if they never get seen? And then the theater director, Satyadev Dubey, was a very dear friend, and he said, you have to do 1 commercial film before you say, I'm not doing any films. So in the middle of my IIM, I did this commercial film with Sunil Dutt called Himalaya Se Uncha. And Amma and Papa knew Sunil Dutt and Nargis very well, so they said, you know, she'll be okay, she'll be safe. And we were shooting in Kashmir in the middle of nowhere. And I had the most grotesque experiences of men trying to make passes at me, much older men assuming that I would be okay with them sleeping with me, making passes at me, whatever. Anyway, so at that stage, I said, you know, this is not for me, I'm quitting. And then Satyadev said, no, you have to have at least 1 more experience. So I signed up for a film with Amitabh Bachchan and Vinod Khanna, Zeenat Aman and I. And on the first day of our shoot, we were shooting on top of the 10th floor of an unfinished building. I was shooting a song with Vinod Khanna. The film was called Hera Feri. And we were shooting a song number, and there was this big fat man, dance director, sitting on a chair looking like a toad. And he went on saying, no, do it again. After the 10th take, I went to him and I said, you know, I'm word perfect. I'm doing exactly what you asked me to do. Why do you keep saying don't? So he said, you're not moving your tits enough. I picked up the chair, I broke it on his head, and I walked out of the Hindi film industry. Many years later, I did 2 other films in Hindi, one with Basu Bhattacharya called Shisha. Shisha is a film that would be avant-garde even today because it's about a secretary who is raped by her boss, Mithun Chakravarti, who is very powerful, and she takes him to court. And of course, the boys' club gets together and says, you know, why would such an important corporate leader want to rape a woman from the Chawls who is his secretary? Again, ahead of its time, but because it was Basuda, it got released and I got an award for it. And then I did this really funny film with Sai Paranjpe called Katha, where I played this beautiful dilettante, very rich woman who's taken for a ride. That was just a fun film because I love Sai. Then I did a French film. Then I went into Gujarati cinema. I did my first Gujarati film because I love films. I hated the people, but I loved the medium. I love television. I love everything to do with the camera. So I did this Gujarati film, which became a cult. It's called Meena Gurjari, And like Kannagi in Tamil Nadu, Meena is a young girl who has become a goddess and is still worshipped as a goddess. And this film, till today, remains the highest grosser ever, the highest 52 houseful weeks in 16 theaters or something like this. And people still, when they see me, 45 years later, start singing my songs. And even today in Navratri, it's the songs from that film that are the most popular. Then I did a French film. And 20 years ago, TV Chandran called me to say, I'm doing a film called Susanna. Will you do it? And I thought, yes, I will, because the story sounded very interesting. And 15 days before the film was to start, I broke my leg. So I couldn't do Susanna. But when he was doing his next film, Danny with Mammootty, he asked me, and it was the role of a 75-year-old. And he kept saying to me, don't flash your eyes because that's not the way. So I said, I don't know what conception of a 75-year-old you have, but my mother is 75 and her eyes flash all the time. She doesn't go around like this. And I said, what kind of a 75-year-old? Anyway, that was a lovely experience. The only person besides Chandran who spoke English, and I understood Malayalam, but spoke none at all, I speak much more Malayalam today, was his son, Yadavan, who had just graduated from the film school at Loyola and was made the 8th assistant only to look after me because he spoke English. And lo and behold, by the end of the film, I had convinced Yadavan to join Darpana, and he's now the artistic head 23 years later. So, yes, I came to do a Malayalam film, but I took a lot back. But to any filmmaker who's listening to this, give me a good role and I will do it, irrespective of the language, irrespective of who you are. Give me a meaty role and I'd love to do it.
Thank you. Any questions? I would love to open this session to the audience. Yeah, please.
Hi, ma'am.
Hi.
I'm so happy your mother is so progressive that a long time back, one of students came and told her that she's getting married. She said, why don't you start living together? That's one of the issues that I would like to talk about, because there are many people, especially in a middle class society, who are having relationship, living together. But then they keep it in the dark because they are so scared, especially in a place like Kerala. No, if it is a place, a metro like Mumbai or Bangalore, no one is bothered about what you are doing. But in a place like Kerala, people are still very, I don't know what, very conservative or narrow-minded.
Frightened.
Exactly.
Frightened is the word.
Yes, exactly.
You have to change it. What will happen if you start living? Who will say what? Will you lose your job? Unlikely. Will you lose some friends?
No.
Good riddance. If you lose them, they were not worth having. You have to be true to yourself. Living with lies is a promise of unhappiness, insecurity. The minute you hide something, you are really focusing only on who will find out.
Yeah.
How is that a life?
And people look at you condescendingly as if you are
Let
having
them, how does it matter to you?
yeah.
When I was 5 years old and the first day of school, it was a Montessori school, as I told you, we were sitting in this big circle and we were asked to draw a face. And we all drew a face, and I must have drawn the ears in the wrong place. So there was this little boy sitting next to me who said, you are a complete ass. And I got very upset. I went home, I started crying. And as usual, Amma was on tour. Papa came home. Why are you crying, Malli? I said, this boy called me an ass. I'm never going back to that school. So Papa took me in his lap and said, Malli, what are you? And I said, I'm a little girl. So he said, Malli, you know the difference between a little girl and an ass. He doesn't. You should feel sorry for him.
Thank you.
Only those can humiliate or insult you that you give the power to do so too. You are the one giving the power to people to hurt you. You are the one. In love, you are giving them the power. But why should you give the power to all and sundry, your neighbor? I do answer questions that come from men.
Madam, how do you see Kerala, lifestyle in Kerala? How do you see it?
Unfortunately, going the wrong way. You are becoming complete capitalists. You sell your daughters for gold. The daughters are terrified. The women have no respect. The kind of scandals that come out of here of young boys filming their mothers so that they can buy more porn. It's pathetic. You've got to change. You have something that nowhere in India has. Don't blow it. Don't let the Bimaru states come and brainwash you. Don't let societies that treat women like cattle influence you. Go and earn outside if you want, but keep your integrity. The soul is right. It's the outside that has gone completely putrid. Men, don't be frightened to be liberal human beings. Women, fight it.
Thank you for your inspired speech. Who should change, men or women?
Both. You can't have change one way.
Yes, yes.
The food has to be nutritious, but you do need to do a lot of work with your mouth before it settles, right?
Yes, yes.
And men and women are not in a race. Human life is not a race. You know, the way men police women, I give this example. Think of somebody in a high security jail who is inside bars, and think of the guard outside who is guarding this prisoner. The guard can't go anywhere because the prisoner will run away. So what is the difference between the two? One is in a prison that he recognizes. One is a prisoner outside. That's the way men are. If you spend all your time saying, who is she SMSs? Whose scent is on her? Why is she dressed in a sari like this? Who is she on the phone with? Where is your freedom? Be free. You have to trust. Life is about trusting. And if somebody treats you badly, if you fall down, never mind. Trust again.
No more questions?
Good, we are done.
They've all decided to change from today, Mallika.
Believe you me, I'm certainly talking a lot to my Kala Mandalam students to be different.
Hi, Mallika. Should art upset? I'm asking you this because movies like Animal or Kabir Singh are being celebrated. They are the biggest blockbusters. What are your thoughts? Should art provoke and upset?
Art is about the only thing that can provoke and upset, but art has become an industry. If you see the disgustingly misogynist films that are being celebrated, or if you see the movies like the Kerala Diaries and the Kashmir Files that only spread hatred, you know that this is commercialization and political pressure and money, 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 money. It is up to those artists who have a conscience to make art question, to make. Why is Darpana called Darpana? Because Amma 75 years ago and Papa 75 years ago felt that it was only art that could hold a mirror to show people what they didn't want to see, to show people what their true self was. So yes, of course, art must provoke. And I think literature, it's such fun that you have every kind of book here, that there are so many people at a literature festival. In Ahmedabad, if this was an audience, first of all, in Ahmedabad, you would never have a mixed audience. You would never have an audience where you could see people from different communities. That's number one. Secondly, this would only be a crowd like this if they were talking the share market.
I think if that's that, if there are no more questions, yeah.
I have to tell you that I consider it a great privilege that the Chief Minister has given me the position of Chancellor and wants me to be an extremely active Chancellor. It's a great privilege to be working here, and it's like coming home.
Yeah, thank you, madam. Actually, I came late and I was not here when you were speaking, but I was listening your answer. You want to articulate, you want more question, so I thought I should also ask you a question. Having said that, I want to ask you about Kerala. You have been here in Kerala, and you have been in various parts of India. So you were one side you were arguing that there is a wrong trend there in Kerala, but other side you have been here I think for a while. So what is the difference are you feeling? I think earlier you were in Gujarat. I hope. Am I right? I don't know.
I'm still in Gujarat.
Yeah, Gujarat. So you are frequently visiting here.
I love Kerala. I love the arts energy. I love the fact that there are people who read books and not only the share market or cricket scores. I love the fact that you can go into a village here and there are people collecting food or money to bring an arts festival to life. I think there is nowhere like Kerala. So therefore, don't let the other horrible states influence you into becoming only capitalist, male chauvinist pigs.
So you mean that Kerala is the best example? So we are living coexistently.
Kerala is an amazing example for many, many, many things. But you're also a lousy example for a country, for a state that used to be matrilineal. That also you must accept that you are really taking the worst from the worst.
Thank you, Mallika. I think we have reached the end of the session. Thank
Well,
you for a
zero, zero,
hugely entertaining session. And I think Mallika Sarabhai is the change that Kerala needs. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mallika ma'am, for energizing and revitalizing us with your thought-provoking answers. It was indeed an eye-opener for all the listeners out here. Thank you very much, Dr. Meena Pillai as well.